Well, welcome everyone. We see people jumping in today. We have quite a few people joining us today. So we'll let people get on and join us. We're so excited that you're here. Give it just another 30 seconds or so and we'll get started. We're so excited to see everyone today. I don't know. Welcome. Come on in. We're so glad to see you all. You're more than welcome to keep your video screen on. You don't have to have it on. If you're like me and you're cramming down a sandwich, you may not want everybody to see that, but you're more than welcome. We love to see your beautiful faces. So it's great to see you. Catherine Gates, we're so happy that you're here. Wonderful. Come on in, everyone. We will probably have several screens worth of people. And so if you want to do speaker only, you're welcome to do that. We'll probably keep ours on all the little mini faces because we like to see you all. So welcome. Welcome. All right, well, let's get started. Well, people will continue to come in, and that is great with us. Hi, everyone. And welcome to the Polished Lunch and Learn for November. My name is Amy Cedrone, and I'm the National Director here at the Polished Network, and we are so excited to have everyone joining us on Zoom. This month, our theme is Thank You for Your Service. As you know, this is Veterans Day this month. It's also Thanksgiving. And so because at the Polished Network, we want to honor all of those women who have worked in civil service, the armed forces, or have been an essential worker during COVID, and especially for those serving and sacrificing for our nation and our communities. We have a great speaker lined up, Air Force veteran and financial coach. She's also an author and a mom, Brandy Baxter. You guys might know her. She was on our staff here at Polished Network, and now she is helping her husband plant a church in Garland, Texas. And so we're excited about having her with us. After Brandy's interview in just a minute, we're going to go to our Ask Me Anything segment where she will answer questions that you may have submitted. Please make sure that you keep an eye on the chat feature. The chat is a place where we send important information, where you can enter questions for our speaker and engage in the conversation. You can access that chat by going to the bottom of your Zoom screen and select chat. Also, be sure to keep yourself muted so that everyone can hear our guest speaker. However, we'd love to see your beautiful faces. So keep your video up if you'd like. You can have it muted if you would like, if you're eating, whatever your preference is there, but we would love to see you. If you only want to see our speaker today, you can go to the top right corner of your screen and hit view and select speaker view. And that way you'll only see who's speaking on the screen. But before we introduce Brandy, we do have a few announcements to make, and I'd love to throw this over to my dear friend Joy for those announcements.
Hi, ladies. I'm Dr. Joy Dahl. I serve as Executive Director here at Polished Network. We have a ton going on, even as we head into the end of the year. And so we would love to share some of these happenings with you, and also encourage you to go to our website, polishednetwork.org, where you can get more information. For anyone who's new today, I'll tell you a little bit about our organization. Polished Network gathers women to navigate the workplace and explore faith together in authentic community. One way that we experience authentic community is through our 9 local chapters, and we would love for you to join us and get connected with other women who are learning what it means to integrate our faith and work. This is at the core of our passion at Polished. You can find chapter locations. You can look more into the speakers. Again, go on our website and hit the chapters tab. And as you may know, last month, Polished launched the Boldly Conference, the first of its kind, first ever Faith and Work Conference by women for women. Participants joined us from 26 states and 5 countries. Together, we had an amazing day of encouragement, of equipping, of empowering from God's word. There were over 20 national main stage speakers and 30 breakout sessions, all sharing from their professional experience and their faith journeys. And what we keep hearing over and over again is, how can I get more of boldly? So there's two ways. The first way is we have actually put together a video. This is a preview today. You are the first people to ever see this. It's still in process, so please have a little grace watching it and showing it over Zoom. It's a Vimeo cut, so it may be a little choppy, but we want to give you a sneak preview into what we have coming up as our Boldly promo. So Amy, do you want to go ahead and share that? She's doing share screen, so just one moment. And you might have to take off mute so we can hear it.
So if you are wondering, am I the right person for the job? Is this the right industry for me? Is this the time that I change? The answer is yes. You are adequate and you are competent as a minister of the gospel and a marketplace woman because of the Holy Spirit, not because of yourself. And this, my friends, is the way that we move past our fear. This is how we stop from holding ourselves back or letting anyone else do the same thing.
Chasing faithfulness is actually your success. A woman who is faithful to God will do what He has pressed on her heart, and therefore she will be successful. A woman who listens to what God asked her to do for her career and her family and obeys Him in that, she is a successful one.
I hope that you will choose to lead with grace. Even though that's not a common word in the business world, it can be modeled and demonstrated. And when coupled with strength, it's a mighty powerful force.
I had a message from a lady once that said, I don't like how you're using Jesus to get all these people in your fitness business. And I said, oh gosh, you've got it backwards. I'm using fitness to talk to people about Jesus.
God, He looked around and He said, this is good. I think that if we don't recognize that what we're going for is excellence, a full offering of everything God has put inside of me, then we're going to miss the opportunity to celebrate the things that God would celebrate, that He is celebrating.
For such a time as this, ladies, God has created you boldly with purpose. He created you female on purpose. Christ has strategically placed you. He has equipped you with your talents, your skills, your passion, your experience, and He's inviting you to join Him.
So again, that is just a first cut. And we are making some edits, and we're going to come out with the final. I'm sorry there was a little lag because of it going over Zoom, but we wanted you to get a sneak peek of that. If you missed out on Boldly, or if you want to give Boldly to women that you know for Christmas, we actually have a package. It's called Boldly On Demand, where you can access all of our sessions, main stage and breakout. Go to boldlyconference.com, look at Boldly On Demand, and I'm going to give you a code. It's 5450. We'll put that in the chat, and that will allow you to have all 50 speakers for $50. So we would love for you to share that with women that you know, or take the holidays to press into the Lord and be equipped and empowered with the truths of Scripture as Christ sends you into your workplace mission field. So we would love to connect with you. You can find contact information on our website. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. And I know that we have a lot to share today. And so I want to turn it back to Amy, but just say thank you all for joining with us today. We're really excited that you're here, and we're excited for our dear sister Brandy to come and share with us.
So without further ado, let's get started. We are so privileged. I'm so excited that you guys get to hear from Brandy Baxter today. Brandy is the author of the book, The Story of Three Little Divas, Reach Your Money Goals in 3 Steps Before You Huff and puff and blow your next paycheck away. Brandy is also the co-founder of Black Girl Financial Magic, an organization that supports and promotes women of color who work or have businesses in personal finance. Brandy Baxter has been serving as a leadership and financial coach for people who want to develop a future-focused mindset. Currently a doctoral student at Regent University studying strategic leadership, Brandy is also a speaker. She's a church planter and a U.S. Air Force veteran. She's married to Herman Baxter, who's the Dean of Students at Dallas Theological Seminary, and he's also a retired Air Force. And she is the mother of 2 daughters, Joy and Faith. She and her husband are also planting one community church, or currently planting one community church, the Garland campus, where her husband will serve as the campus pastor. Brandy has the gift of exhortation, and she loves teaching others how to allow God to lead in their lives. And, you know, I read these bios and I'm like, every single one of these things is true about our dear sister. You know, God is really beautiful in and through her. And so I'm excited to turn it over to her today. I will tell you quickly that typically before we break into the Ask Me Anything section, or we typically break into the Ask Me Anything section immediately after a presentation. But Brandy is actually going to facilitate a discussion with our viewers today towards the end. So we hope that you'll stay engaged, think about questions you might want to ask her, and we'll get to that as one big presentation today. So Brandy, thank you so much for being here. And I want to ask you quickly, you're an Air Force veteran. That's near and dear to my heart. My son leaves in a month to go to fighter pilot training school. So I would love to know, what made you choose military service?
Well, I'll have to be honest, Amy. Military service chose me. And I know that sounds like such a cliche, but I was on my path to college. In fact, I was in college and I found myself with a white collar degree in a blue collar town. And hanging out at my grandparents' house probably more than I needed to. My uncle one day, who was a retired Army, he comes to me and he says, Brandy, you need order and you need discipline. Oh. Now, we had visited their home in Kentucky several times on the military post, so I knew exactly what that meant. That sounded like dirt, crawling, climbing, and the whole thing. And I was like, no way, I want no part of that. What I didn't know of is this little thing called the branch wars, where there's like a war between the military branches. So he jokingly, with tongue in cheek, says to me, no, you're going to go to the Air Force. And I'm like, okay. Had no idea that he was, being a little sarcastic at the time. However, we went and met with the Air Force recruiter. And the more I listened to him talk, the more I realized I did need another challenge. And so I kind of naively just joined the Air Force.
Wow. And so tell us a little bit about what you did in the Air Force. What did that look like? What did you get to see?
So I worked in a medical clinic and we did all of the pre and post deployment briefing. So as you see, like in the media and on the news, folks preparing to leave to go off to war. Well, my office helped prepare them medically. We gave them presentations. We looked at all of the concerns that they had to be aware of to prep them. And then when they returned, we were one of the first people that they stopped to see. We had to ask all the questions. What were you possibly exposed to? Did you eat anything that made you sick? The whole 9. But in addition to that, we also monitored the food safety on the base, the water safety, and the craziest thing of all is we had to do disease tracking and surveillance. So just imagine an entire base full of people, most of us fresh out of college or fresh out of high school, young people, unmarried. You can imagine what kind of diseases I had to track.
Oh my goodness. In so many ways, you joined the Air Force, and the Air Force really is to serve our country, but the role that you had in the Air Force was to serve the Air Force and to serve your fellow. And so tell us, that's a season that's passed, but how is service still a part of your life?
Oh my gosh, it's so interesting. I talked about spending a little too much time at my grandparents' house after college, and I just have these fond memories of my grandparents always serving our community. At the time as a child, it just seemed very normal and natural. My grandparents had a community garden before it was the cool thing to do. And my grandmother always made everyone feel welcome. In fact, to this day, when my aunts and uncles get together, one of the running jokes is how many people came to our house for dinner that did not belong to our family. But I've always just seen my grandmother lending a hand and extending whatever was at her disposal to others. And so going into the military, I was blessed to serve in a beautiful location, Great Falls, Montana, with a super small community that was comprised of military members. And I found that serving others was a part of serving in the military. So you mentioned how my work allowed me to serve my fellow airmen, but I remember being involved with reading at the local elementary school, participating in, food drives and serving meals on the holidays. And I didn't know at the time, but that was just intrinsic to who I was. So all these opportunities kept presenting themselves, and I found myself just immersed in it. So fast forward to today, when I left the military, when my husband left the military, we're members of several veteran organizations. And the big thing that the veteran community does is we all have this spirit of giving back. And so we continue to serve that way. And we serve in our local community. Like my kids are notorious for whatever kind of a cleanup day our city is having. We are out there raking leaves and picking up trash because I want to incorporate a spirit of service in them as well.
I love that. So I don't want to give away the whole prize here, Brandy, but when we talked, you said you had 3 main points, and you said service begins with a smile, service encourages self, and that service requires sacrifice. So serving others begins with a smile. What do you mean by that? And how can something so simple like actually make a difference? Like that seems pretty simple. Explain that.
So before I go there, as soon as I heard you say that, I was like, oh my gosh, I have been married to a preacher way too long with my 3 points. But service begins with a smile. One of the things that has been impressed upon me is when you are serving others, you often are meeting them at their lowest point. If I'm delivering meals, or like this Thanksgiving, our family will be serving meals before we partake of Thanksgiving meal ourselves. But when you're serving someone who is in need, or picking up trash for someone who is physically unable to do so, you are meeting a person at a low point, a place that can often be filled with shame and guilt and embarrassment. And so if we approach service with that mindset that, wow, the people we are serving might be in a vulnerable place emotionally, starting with a smile helps tear down barriers. It helps put the other person at ease, and it helps remind you that this is actually an opportunity to do some fun work. It may feel physical and it may feel challenging, but it's actually an opportunity to do fun work. And so starting with a smile, albeit super simple, I think it's a great way to build that bridge of trust with the people that you're serving with.
It's so good. What I hear you saying is it's really, there's an intentionality that comes when you make the effort to be approachable, when it almost like, how can you say, it almost level sets when you are giving somebody the dignity of your attention. By
Yes.
giving them a smile, it level sets, right? That you're not above, they're not below, like they are a fellow human being whom you are loving and whom you are serving. Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, several years ago when we lived in the DC, Washington, DC area, our pastor at the time had a heart for the homeless. And we did a lot of work with homeless ministry. And so where I worked, on my path from my office to the restaurant row, there was a homeless guy who would sit there. And I have to admit, prior to kind of being in a culture of service, I would have just walked on by with whatever my preconceived notions were about him. But because I was in a culture that was really intentional on serving the homeless, I stopped, had a conversation with him. I would buy him lunch. I mean, to the point that my husband was like, should we claim him on our taxes? But the funny thing is, the more I just smiled and began having conversations, he shared with me that he was like a top executive at a nearby company, And his journey to homelessness began with family tragedy. His son was a mistaken identity, killed in a drive-by shooting. And he said, Brandy, I literally checked out. And to the point that he said he didn't even feel comfortable being in the place that most of us take for granted, indoors, because his son was shot indoors. And so he found some sort of a balance, if you will, being homeless and on the street in that position. And it blew my mind, because the preconceived idea is that homeless people fill in the blank, whatever your preconception is. But just having that conversation, and like you said, giving him the dignity and respect. He said, Brandy, you have no idea how many people walk by me and will never make eye contact.
Wow.
It's as if he's invisible. And so the energy and the effort that it takes to give someone a smile. And I love what Tyra Banks says, the smiling with your eyes even counts. But to take the time to acknowledge a person, a living, breathing, God-created person, it's such a genuine act of service. And I think we don't give it the credit that it often deserves.
You're so right. It's funny that you mentioned Tyra Banks, because she came up with the word smize, which is smiling with your eyes. And, during COVID, when we're having to wear the mask, that's something I just practiced. I probably overdid it, just I want people to know that they are seen and that they are appreciated, and that their presence matters. And I love that you're talking about this. That's a powerful story about your homeless friend.
His name is Michael, by the way.
Michael. I just want to meddle a little bit more. When we're talking about serving the homeless, or serving in missions, or whatever that is, that's one thing to bring a smile. But what about serving your family? Serving those in your sphere of influence, serving those in your workplace, the people that you see day in and day out, maybe even the people that are that you lead. Can you talk a little bit about bringing a smile to that too?
Oh my gosh, that's a great question. So I see some of my fellow lady vets on the call, so thank you for joining, and this will really resonate with them. But in the veteran community, the media has conditioned us to think that a veteran is a white male, and primarily someone who has served in the war and who may be injured in some way. And so when I first started working in veteran services, I came in as a female, like the exact opposite of the stereotype, right? And so, and the role that I was serving in was to lift the voice of women veterans. And so here I attend these male-dominated venues and events, and I'm like, hey, our service counts too. But to your point, even in a situation where it feels like I'm not serving someone, a smile, even for people who are expecting there to be tension, a smile can diminish and diffuse tension so quickly. I have made some amazing friends through that work because I lead with a smile. I mean, everyone that knows me, they know I lead with a smile. And some of it is like just second nature for me, because I really truly believe that that is the best welcoming and the best greeting card to introduce anyone to who I am and my personality. So in your workplace, if you have that challenging coworker, start leading with a smile. In your workplace, if you are, especially like Amy said, in your family, if you have family members who there's a little bit of push and pull going on, lead with a smile before you speak. Because thinking about just the physical act of smiling, it's so hard to have a negative attitude when you're smiling. It's so hard to think mean words when you're smiling. It just does something, I know for me, it does something for my brain. Like smiling just lifts my whole attitude. And so when you start serving others and you start with a smile, it really has a chance to be transformative.
It's so good. It's so good. And I know that our group today, it's not all moms, but I know with my kids, and this would translate to friends, it would translate to you know, the people that are close to you, just that the first time that you see somebody, that you have a smize or you have a smile, just that there's a look of love on your face, you know, for the first time you engage with somebody, even if you're all business, just that act is so, I don't know, it's to me, it's dignity building. So I love that you say that. It's so simple. It's something that we could do immediately to transform how we interact with our coworkers, how we interact with the loved ones around us, how we interact with, you know, the Michaels of the world. And so thank you for sharing that. I think that's awesome. And I'm going to practice that a little bit more in my own life. That is for sure. Your second point is service encourages self. So it's not just about the other person, right? And I hear this. I used to live in mission world. That was where my husband and I were going to go full time into missions. And I would always hear people when they came back from a mission trip or humanitarian aid trip say, I got as much out of it as I gave. So I'm wondering if that's what you're talking about, but how can we find encouragement for ourselves when serving others?
Yeah, so one of my core beliefs and tenets is gratitude. And when I think about serving others, the very first thing that it does is it lifts me to a place where I appreciate all the things that I have. I think about, you know, when last year my girls and we did some work in our neighborhood and we were picking up trash and cutting bushes, things that I don't normally do. But it was like, we're going to help serve other veterans who are unable to do it themselves. And I remember one widow, she came out to give my daughter some cookies because she was just so impressed that they were out there doing that. And she began telling her story. And as she was telling her story of her loved one and his military service, and then later he passed away and she's a widow, and he used to do the yard work. And it was a moment for her that fellow veterans who did not know her husband have come to her home to do yard work with their kiddos, no less. And it just reminds me that one, Brandy, you're not going to be young forever. Two, you're going to need someone to do your yard work one day. And it just really makes me appreciate all the things that I currently have, my ability to move, my mind, my vision, and the things, my girls, my husband, my friends. And so that moment of stepping into someone else's world and being a part of it in such a personal way when you are serving them, if you allow it, it will reflect back to you all of the things that you have to be grateful for. And then also reiterate for you that life is but a vapor. And if we're not careful, we could be in their situation or our turn will be next. And what have we invested in others? What have we done of meaning? What have we done that adds value? And so I find myself always encouraged by the people who are making the best out of what appears to be nothing. The people who have so little and are so thankful. It always encourages me like, wow, Lord, you allow me this opportunity to be your hands and feet in a community of people that are hurting. And so I'm always so encouraged and I'm grateful for the opportunity to do so.
It's so good. So good. So your third tenet is service requires sacrifice. That is certainly true of our military veterans, the sacrifice that you all have made for our country. And we're so grateful for that. It's so true. Service requires sacrifice. Your daughters sacrificed to pick up the trash in those neighborhoods. They sacrificed their you know, so obviously we all give up something to help others. So why is it important to mention this idea of sacrifice with service?
Well, it seems obvious, right? Oh my gosh, I'm going to serve someone else. So clearly there's a sacrifice. Mm-hmm. But I'm not even thinking from the standpoint of a personal sacrifice. What I would like for our audience to think about is service that is sacrificial. And so what that means is not so much what am I giving up? What is it doing to me? Because again, that makes it me-centered. But sacrificial service says, how am I voluntarily choosing to put someone else's needs ahead of my own? So I don't want sacrifice to come across as if, oh, it's going to cost me a lot of money. It's going to cost me a lot of time. It's going to cost me a lot of energy. I would like for you all to think about sacrificial service to others as, what opportunity can I voluntarily place the needs of someone else above those of my own? So for example, our church is doing a Thanksgiving dinner where we're feeding families. Now, we're doing this from 11 to 1. Traditionally, most of us are cooking our own meals on Thanksgiving. But I have been very intentional to tell my daughters, we are going to serve others first. We're going to make sure someone else eats first. Now, sacrifice would say, give them your food, right? But sacrificial service says, I am choosing to put their needs ahead of my own. So before I lift a bite of anything to my mouth, I am choosing to put the needs of someone else above my own and feed another family. Additionally, when we look at the example of Jesus, he voluntarily came to earth and gave his life so that we would have an opportunity to be reconciled back to the Father. What are the volunteer opportunities that God is calling us to so that we can glorify his name? I think about even in the workplace, if there is workplace tension, especially that one coworker that causes the hairs on the back of your neck to stand, sacrificially serving that person says, Lord, what can I do to make their needs more important than my own so that you are glorified? Because it's easy to volunteer, right? Volunteer and sacrificial service are distinctly different. Volunteering says, I'm going to show up, I'm going to do a thing, I'm going to get a t-shirt, I'm going to go home. Sacrificial service says, I am going to pray and discern if this is the opportunity that God wants me to use to glorify him. More importantly, I'm going to show up and I'm going to do God honoring work. And then thirdly, when I leave, I expect to be changed. I expect to have more gratitude. I expect to have more love. I expect to have more fruit of the Spirit. So the difference between volunteering and sacrificial service really starts with our heart attitude and focusing on lifting the needs, the situations, or even just the very person of someone else above our own.
Brandy, that's so good. So good. It gives you so much to think about, the idea of sacrificial service instead of sacrificing so that I can serve. It's a really powerful distinction because, as you were talking, I was thinking, gosh, what prevents me from doing that? And I realized it's the mindset, because the first thing you said is pray to see what the opportunities are. And I'm just saying, gosh, what a place in our culture, in this world, at this time, to be thinking about how we can sacrificially serve others. We've been so isolated. Mm-hmm. And I think this is such a beautiful question, but to pray first, to ask for those opportunities, because honestly, the first thing that jumps into my mind is, when am I going to find the time in my schedule to do that? Right. Like, I know that I'm wired that way. I want to do that, but my schedule's crazy, right? But if you pray about this, then what it does is it opens you up for God to reveal what it is that you are to do and whom you are to serve in that sacrificial way. And so that's maybe a challenge for some people. For me, is the time. What are some other challenges that we might expect when trying to practice service to others, especially the difficult people? You mentioned that. What are some of the challenges?
Well, to your point, Amy, the first challenge is when we take our focus off of what we're doing and we make it about us. And a moment ago, you were saying, like, wow, where do I find the time? You all that know me, you know that my calendar is madness. However, there are opportunities that I know in my heart are God ordained. And there are other opportunities that would be a volunteer opportunity, right? So it's not inspired by any sacrifice. And so I have to be really intentional of what I say yes to. So the first obstacle can be if you have the disease of yes. We'll call it that, the disease of yes. There was a season in my life when I said yes to everything, and it created so much chaos. It was not God honoring. And so being able to recognize this is an opportunity that would really allow me to glorify God. Yes, I will take that. this is an opportunity that is pulling on my heartstrings in a way unlike any other. Yes, I will take that. This is an opportunity because my neighbors are doing it. No, I'm not sure that's for me. Or this is an opportunity because my friend just asked me to do it and they're doing it. No, that might not be for me. So having that clear distinction, that can help you overcome the obstacle of the disease of yes. The other obstacle can be when God is pushing you to out of your comfort zone. And so I shared a moment ago, I don't do yard work. I don't do yard work at my house. So when I was like, wait, our city is doing this cleanup and it's specifically for veterans, and my heart immediately was like, we should be in this. And my brain was like, girl, you don't know anything about yard work. But the longer that it kept coming to my mind, and I would talk about it in my prayer time, I just kept getting confirmation. This is where I want you to be. And had I not done that, I would have missed the lady with who was the widow, etc. And so I feel like when we are faced with challenges from the Lord, that can be an obstacle, and we allow fear to hold us back. It can also be an obstacle. Our own affluence can be an obstacle. Early on, my husband and I married, and we were in Virginia, and we were serving at the ministry there. A friend of mine, and I love her for this, I was unconsciously in my brain thinking I was better than the people we were serving. And so I walked in, and I didn't know this, but apparently I had my nose in the air and I had a certain air about me as if I was better. And she pulled me aside and she said, no one will see your heart because you're coming across as if you are better. And that was powerful. And so sometimes we can approach service with, I'm going to help someone. Notice my 3 tenets have nothing to do with helping. It has everything to do with truly serving. Now we know that when Jesus came, he helped us, right? By reconciling us back to the Father. But his ministry was about meeting the need and meeting the need in a practical way, but doing so in a way that was not embarrassing or shameful. And so when we think we're better than the people we're serving, that becomes a huge obstacle to service. So those are the top 2 that come to mind. I'm happy for those of you who are watching with us. If you have questions or obstacles that are maybe kind of front and center for you right now, I'm happy to chat about them. But those are the 2 that come to mind for me, Amy.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, that whole idea about helping versus serving is so important. You know, here at the Polish Network, we really believe in the idea of empowering women and equipping women. And, you know, there's a great book called When Helping Hurts, and it talks about this, you know, swooping in, helping, and with maybe a lack of empowering or equipping or setting somebody else up for success or truly serving them. And so thank you for mentioning that. It's super helpful as we think about this idea of what it really means to sacrificially serve. I would love to, we have a few minutes here. I would love to transition over to maybe some questions from our listeners, our guests that are joining us today. If you have questions, would you throw those in the chat? I would love to hear from you. I know Brandy would love to hear from you. Do you have any questions or even comments about this idea of serving, especially in regard to sacrificial serving? And so as you do that, as you put your questions in the chat, Brandy, can you quickly share with us about this amazing highlight that you had last week? Can you share a little bit about that?
Certainly. So this was so random. Wow. My family and I were highlighted on the First Lady of the United States, her Instagram and Facebook, in recognition of Veterans and Military Family Month, and right up like 2 days before Veterans Day. So high profile time. And it really, there's our picture, so cute, my family. And her staffers reached out to me because they had read another article where I was talking about serving and being a military spouse. And they wanted to kind of know more, like, what am I doing now? And just what was it like being a military spouse? And so there were several articles of people that they were interviewing. And she was very clear. no guarantees. I'm not sure we're going to post your story. I'm like, okay, no worries. I was not worried about it. And then all of a sudden on that day, my text messages started blowing up. My phone rang a few times. Like, is this you and your family? Because she posted us. And what I loved about that post is it really, for the first time that I can think of, highlighted me instead of my husband.
Wow.
Because, like I stated, traditionally, the male is lifted up as the veteran. And so knowing that we both served and that both of our service mattered, I was like excited to talk about me, but then to have my family as part of that. And I'm equally grateful for the respect and love of my husband, who is never threatened by the attention that I bring our family and super supportive of that. So yeah, that was such a surprise. And I am just grateful for the privilege to continue being a voice for women veterans, for spouses, for working moms. Every platform that I get, I try to highlight those three voices, because yet again, that is my opportunity to serve for those who are not in the positions that I've been granted.
Yes, I love that so much. What an honor to be honored by her. I'm so glad too that they mentioned they give him a shout out. They give Herman a shout out, but it really was about thanking you as a woman for serving. And you know what else I loved about that post is they were wise enough to point out that you were also you were not just a veteran. You were the wife of a serviceman when you retired and he was still in. And I love that it highlighted that military wives, military spouses are just as much in the game of service as the husband or the wife who is actively serving. It's so true. That's true for any leader. There are people that are behind them, supporting them, that are increasing and supporting the service that they are doing. And so I loved that as well. And we did have a few comments that came in, and I'd love to share those. Nicole, she mentioned, she said, I agree with all the talking points. And she says, sometimes serving others can also begin with asking how we can help.
Mm-hmm.
How may I serve you?
Yes.
So important.
I think that is definitely Amy, I've got all the comments. But I think that is so critical, because if we don't ask the question, we could do harm. And especially in a one-to-one intimate environment, not an organized service event, right? But like, if you come across someone and you feel compelled to help and to serve, simply asking them how could go miles further than simply jumping in and doing something, especially if it is a personal thing. Like Amy mentioned in my bio, my background is in personal finance and I work with couples. And so if I'm not careful, I could tell a couple, well, you need to do this, because this worked for my husband and it worked for me, without any context of their situation. But if I pause and I say, okay, well, what do you think would best serve you? That's a totally different experience than me jumping in and trying to help, but rather serving because I'm making them the center versus me being the center.
It's so good. I love that. Catherine mentions in her post, and it's hard for me to read it without feeling a little bit like choking up. She says it's so critical to see each person as God sees them. Through Ladies of Grace, a women's prison ministry, the women find Jesus because they experience us treating them the way we treat and interact with each other. The reason that makes me a little emotional is because one of the most impactful things that I was invited to be a part of, and I didn't even know what I was getting into, was to serve in a prison ministry. And it was so personally impactful, but the most beautiful thing, it's so true, the way that when we treat each other as the way, just like you said, when I mold, I wanted somebody to come mow my lawn, right? When we treat somebody the way that we would hope to be treated, there's just this, it's just level setting. It's absolutely, I keep saying the word dignifying. It just brings dignity. And so I love that. You know what would be fun, Brandy? Why don't we ask our people today here a question about serving? How have you served recently that was personally enriching and encouraging to you? Throw that answer in the chat for us. how have you served? You can just put just a sentence or even a few words about how have you served that was personally enriching, personally encouraging to you. So throw that in the chat right now. We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, that's a great question, Amy.
I would love to hear. It may be crickets, it's fine, but we'd love to hear from you guys.
Now, I know 2 people, 3 people for sure on the line who have served. And I also, while you all are typing, because I realize it can take a little bit to get your full sentences, I want you to think about service also from the standpoint that is not super organized. You know, most of my service examples that I gave today were in organized activity. But think about the times when you knowingly or even unknowingly at the time lifted the needs or the experiences of someone else above your own. When you are at this crossroad, perfect example, driving on any highway here in Texas, and you have the opportunity to either let someone in because they don't have a blinker on and you're not sure if they really want to get in, or do you speed on and not let them in? When have you had an opportunity to lift someone else above you? That is the root of sacrificial service. And so just take a moment and think about some times when you've done that. Yes, I knew Betty Ann had something. Betty Ann is a fellow Air Force veteran, and I love her. Thank you. She says, this was the first Veterans Day I served vets instead of hanging out with family. Awesome. Love that. I'm sorry, Amy, go on.
No, I was going to say, Betty, thank you for serving. Thank you for your service to our country. And Christy says, community cleanup in an underserved area that now has a brand new charter school. That's awesome. The principal was overwhelmed with gratitude, and everyone on the service team was moved to tears. Man, when we can help our schools, that is a beautiful way to reach our communities. Dr. Joy says, serving an elderly couple is one prepared to meet Jesus face to face. Oh man. And the other needed someone to come alongside and help with practical, financial, and legal needs. You know, for some of us, sitting by somebody's bed is a hard thing emotionally, but there are some other ways to serve, you know, and just to practically do that. I have a friend that just went over, her neighbor across the street lost a child, and was just, she didn't really know what to say. But what she did, she just stood up and she said, I'm going to do your dishes. And she would just come over every day and do the dishes. And that was, she didn't have to say anything. She didn't have to try to minister it with words and all this stuff. She just brought what she could do. And so Joy, that's a beautiful example. And then Nicole says, encouraging a young woman, or young man, just kidding, encouraging a young man who had made some very poor decisions to live a life of purpose. I was challenged to extend the gift of grace instead of judgment. Lord have mercy, you would all follow that.
Yes. Shout out to Nicole Brown, who is also my former pastor's wife. Love her. Thank you for the support.
That's awesome. And Deb says, walking alongside women for a portion of their journey, letting them know they are seen and heard and not alone. I know Deb, and I know exactly what she's talking about. And this is a beautiful way to support those who have struggled, women who have struggled or been in hard situations. And so it's a great example. And Emily says, taking meals to neighbors sick with COVID, oh my goodness, was one of the ways I was able to serve others in my current life season. I would bet that there are many of us on this screen who have served somebody that was locked down with COVID. And so I love that that's an example. And that's something that, I mean, that's just right here where we are right now in our world. So great. You know, we don't have a ton of time left. I want to make sure that we end on time, but Brandy, I just thank you so much. Is there any kind of parting thoughts on service that you would love to share or wrap up with?
Certainly. First, I want to shout out Katie Valio, who also is a vet, and she said that her service recently was giving resources to someone that wasn't aware that they could get help. She is phenomenal at that. I just kudos to her. But I want to encourage all of us. First of all, thank you, ladies, for allowing me to take up your afternoon and to chit chat about my random musings. But I also just want to encourage us to be more attentive to lifting the needs of others in a God glorifying way, not about us and our recognition, but in a way that people will say, wow, she must be a believer in Jesus Christ.
Yes.
Thanks, Amy.
So beautiful. Brandy, the message is so timely. And I just imagine what would our world look like if God's daughters rose to the challenge of sacrificial service. If we prayed that prayer, Lord, what do you want me to do? What do you have for me? What opportunities can I bring your smile, your joy into? And I thank you for that timely message. And then every one of us, I'm just going to speak for every woman on this screen. I'm just going to say, Brandy, thank you for your service to Polished, to your financial mentees, especially your service to our country. We are grateful for you. Thank you so much. Dr. Joy.
Thank you.
Brandy, I want to say thank you as well. We were so honored to have Brandy on staff with us for over a year, and we are just pleased to be able to launch her with her husband Bax as they go into the season of planting a church for One Community Church. We're so excited, and we are very happy that she wants to continue to be an ambassador and a champion for Polished. And so, Brandy, we love you, we thank you, and we truly do say as well, thank you for your service to our country, your service to your husband and your family, and all that you do for your church, for your community, for Polished women. You really do embody what sacrificial service looks like. I have been taking so many notes, and I can't wait to spend some time this afternoon praying through them. But I love the points, not only of smiling. It's interesting because recently I feel like God's been talking to me about this thing of smile therapy, where when we smile, it's actually a physical reaction that lifts our spirit. So to hear that your first point is about smiling, I'm like, this is exactly what he's been telling me, this smile therapy. So I love that, how serving can really encourage us and lift our spirits. It's not just about what God can do for others through us, which is important, but really what the Lord can do for us when we say yes. And that's an important part of the yes, and really offering that time to him. And then just, again, that idea of sacrificial service. So what great points. Thank you so much. And again, thank you to everyone who joined us today. We do want to acknowledge that we have an amazing sacrificial servant in Jesus Christ who came and lived and died. And here at Polished Network, we believe in the big story of the Bible, that God made something good, that we in humanity, we messed it up. But God sent his beloved son, Jesus, to come. He lived, he died, he rose again. And we know that he's coming back, and he will make all things right. And between now and then, he is inviting us to join with him, to become those sacrificial servants, his hands and feet here on earth, as we bring glory to him and prepare for him to come back. And he's inviting us into this mission, and he has strategically placed each one of us in our circles of influence for such a time as this. And so if you have any questions about what that means, or something today really sparked your interest, I know Brandy would love to hear from you. We would love to hear from you. You can find us again, all of our handles on our website. Reach out to any one of us. We would love to talk to you. And as we also enter this season of giving and Thanksgiving, we want to say thank you to everyone who supports our mission. We are a 501c3 organization. And if you feel prompted to support women who are in the workplace and really wrestling with the hard questions of God, coming alongside others and learning what it means to live out faith and work, we would love for you to consider supporting our ministry. All donations are tax deductible. And again, you can go on our website, polishednetwork.org, and hit the giving tab. So thank you again for being here today. We love you. We thank you for the way that you serve others and you serve our living Lord. And I just pray a truly blessed season of Thanksgiving in the coming week. So thank you for being here today.